How about some of the jobs that you've had? You know, you've all told us what some of your main jobs that you've had in the military. Did you have any, like through basically? I know that in our first group we learned, you know, some people had, well, I don't know Joy, but they had like KP duty or something like that. My dad told me that he was in charge of groups and getting them to take groups to the barber. And some people never had barber experience, but they were now the barber. Did any of you have any odd jobs throughout the military, through your military experience?
I had an interesting one. You probably remember this at Lackland. They would march a flight of guys up to this building, and they had an entry door and an exit door, and it was where everybody got their shots for overseas shipment. You'd step through the door, and there were footprints in the floor. I don't know where they had them. Yeah. And you'd step forward, and they'd hit you with the set on each arm, and then you'd step forward again, and we got 7 shots in a row on the footprints, and you weren't thinking it was too bad until you stepped out the other door on the other end of the building, and guys are laying all over the ground. Oh! Yep. Their arms are hanging. Anyway, you have to march these guys back then, and you get your shots as well. But a significant thing that happened right in front of me, a young man, you got of course you're just every t-shirt on, and he said, "Don't flinch," because they're air pressured syringes. Yeah. And he went like that, and it just like with a butcher knife laid his arm open. So they had to take him to the hospital and have it stitched up. Interesting, sorry. Your mind goes crazy with all the experiences you've had.
Well, you were talking about barbers. When I was in there, we got to San Diego, and that's the first place we went was the next day to get our haircut. And you walk through the door, and they got a bunch of sailors up there giving haircuts, and you walk, like you say, everybody's got to go in a line. I got up to this, I had pretty long hair. And, I got up to this guy, and he brushes off his seat and has me sit down. I sit down. "How'd you like your haircut?" I said, "Just take a little bit off so it's above the ears." And he said, "Well, fine." My hair.
More humiliation. Yeah. Teaches you what it's all about. Yeah.
I was lucky on odd jobs that being a medic in the Air Force, we were lucky where I was at the Air Force Academy because it was a college there obviously too. So we didn't have, Air Force plays Army and Navy every year, right? Well, whoever's playing at home that year, we call it the Corona Conference. All the bigwigs came in, all the higher ups, all the generals, the politicians, and come to the Air Force Academy and watch the Air Force play Army, Navy, whoever it is. Well, all the rest of the guys around I hung out around with at different jobs, they'd have to drive these guys around. They'd have to go pick them up at Pete Airfield, drive them over to the academy, haul their luggage into their hotel room, their on-base facility to live and stuff. But we as medics, we got to cover all the sporting events, just like you do. So we covered all the Air Force football games, hockey, all that stuff. So that's what we always did. So we didn't have to do all those other weird jobs. So I was able to go to my first hockey game. We went out on the ice, pick up injured guys. My side duty was that kind of stuff, covering sporting events. So that was kind of fun. So we didn't have none of that KP stuff for us.
As long as it wasn't you they were picking up. Right?
Exactly.
Well, going along with what Art said about hair, since there aren't any other women involved, what did I have to do as a woman for my hair? You could have your hair as long as you wanted, as long as when you were in your uniform, none of the hair touched the collar, your top collar. So there were a lot of the women in our group that would wear it in a ponytail, knotted up and toss, in a bun or in a. You couldn't wear a ponytail hanging down because that touched your uniform. But I had fairly short hair, kind of like Miss Cavan's. But there were girls that did have long hair, and as long as it was coiled up, we didn't have to have the butch haircut or the sheared looks. I wish I had the haircut that I have now when I was in the Air Force. But
So where are some of the places that you've been able to visit, or you were deployed, either good or bad?
Oh, well, in 1953, right after the Korean, that war was over, we had what they called at that time was Passage to Freedom. And that consisted of, in that time it was French Indochina, it wasn't Vietnam. And we went and the French had control of the people in French Indochina, and that's the reason why it was called that. And we went in there to pick up the first load of taking people that didn't want to be communists. The communists were taking over the whole country, and the French people had French legionnaires. They had them legionnaires in there as trying to take control of the people, and there was a law. So we pulled into Haiphong, Indochina, and the French, on their ship, they brought a load of people out to our ship, and we would load them up. And the communists would tell the women, if they were the pregnant women, you don't want to get on that ship, because if you have your baby, they'll take it and throw it over the side. Or you take your little kids and they'll throw them over the side once you get out in the ocean. It's try to scare the people to get them to stay there. Well, they'd load them, the French would bring them up, and they'd come up and they'd get it loaded, and then we'd take them down and put them in the ship where they had for a lot of bunks, and it was a transport ship anyway. And it'd take us about 3 days to get back and go down to Saigon is where we took them. And had to stay down below, they couldn't be up above, and you had to go through at night for all hours of the night to watch and make sure that the communists didn't slip one or two in there, and they'd slip dynamite down into your boilers. And so they bring them up, they load them up, and if it was 9:15 in the morning, when they were bringing them up early in the morning, everything quit because the French had to have their glass of wine. They took their break. And that was it. They just shut her down right there, and if the people was on our side or the other people, they just all sat and watched the sailors drink their wine, for about 15 minutes. So I was in the Master Arms Force at that time when we done that, and I was on the gangplank bringing them in, and they done that, and I hollered at, well, how about bringing some of your wine? And by golly, they did. They brought us some wine. We wanted to drink wine. Well, we couldn't do it, but then. But anyway, the people that we took down to Saigon, we would get them to sea. We'd get out to sea, and when we come out mealtime, we had these great big pots that they boiled their rice in, and we had canned corned beef. Well, we'd get out there, and when they make that, the mess cooks would make that, they'd cook the rice, drain it, put the corned beef in there, mix it all up, and then they would come in. Well, we got down and we would unload, and there would be maybe 3 or 4 of the pots out there on the main deck, on the bow. We'd unload them in Saigon, and then we'd go back out to sea, and we'd go back up to Haiphong to pick up another load. By golly, the second load, we'd come up there, and we'd look at some of these people, what? They beat us back to Haiphong so they could eat going back to
You're getting out of the cruise business.
What are we doing? Why you can't take it down to Saigon? Well, they didn't want to go to Saigon to begin with. They were wanting to eat. Oh, that was an experience.
Pat, how about you?
I joined the Air Force to, see the world and to wear my beautiful blue uniform, and I was in Texas, Florida for weapons controller school, and then my first permanent base was Luke Air Force Base in Arizona, so I got to stay where it was hot.
Hey, Craig.
I was at Lackland Air Force Base for basic training. My medical training was at Wichita Falls and at Shepherd Air Force Base, and then I went to my clinical training at Carswell Air Force Base in Dallas, Fort Worth, and I was stationed at the Air Force Academy, so I didn't get to see the world by joining the Air Force. But Air Force Academy is a beautiful place to be.
Oh, yeah.
Well, different training activities and short TDYs. primarily in the southeastern portion of the United States. But after that, it was everything from Southeast Asia, Southwest Asia, Southern, Western Europe, Eastern Europe, and some are very, very interesting. You gain a lot of appreciation for the people and the lifestyle that we have in the United States. You know, we pretty much, you know, it's what you see is what you get, especially here in the mid-continent area. And that's a great thing. There are wonderful people everywhere. There are also some people that are not so wonderful.
Lonnie, how about you?
Hard to tell who's on the team at times.
Well, a lot of places, state-wise, I guess I was stationed in Texas and Kansas, North Carolina, Virginia, Florida. I'm sure I forgot one. Overseas, I've had a lot of fortune, as you probably already know, is spending a lot of time in different places. But around the Persian Gulf area, about every country that borders the Persian Gulf, spend a lot of time there, except for Iran. Africa would have been Kenya, Somalia, and Djibouti. Spent a lot of time there. And then in Europe, I got to take my family to Germany for a 3.5-year assignment. So we lived up by Bremerhaven near the North Sea with an second Armored Division up there. So that was about 3.5 years. That was good. The kids were little. And that was a lot of good, fun experiences. Of course, Central Asia, if you're in Afghanistan, you're also going to spend a lot of time in Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and went to Pakistan a couple times, not too much there. So you spend a lot of time in several of the stands that we have relationships with. So if you broke it up in 3, that's a start. I'm sure I missed a few.
Bill?
It was a good experience.
Did a lot of flying around the United States, from base to base training and serving in the field of expertise that we were in. Langley, Lowry, Alameda Naval Base, Warren Air Force Base, Buckley, and then, of course, ended up at, my tour of duty went to the Azores, spent some time, and then finished up in Torrejon Air Force Base in Madrid, Spain. So that was a highlight.
So when you're at these places and you get any fun places to go, like when you got R&R, I mean, especially like those that were in, that served in during wartime, like RMO and Creed, when you were granted a pass, were there any interesting places that you were able to go?
Well, we went, when I first went over, we went right after World War II, and I went into Hiroshima where they had to drop the atomic bomb. That was about 3 years before that, after that. But like I told some of them yesterday, that the bomb, when they dropped the bomb, the people that were on the docks and in the streets, where I would imagine it was the center of the bomb, it left their shadow down in the concrete. And you could tell that that's where they had disintegrated them and all, it left it covered right in, and you could see where people had died. But when I first went in, we covered the whole western part, Asia, Alaska, Aleutian Islands, and down into there, all of that on the China, all of that in the oriental part of the part. And the worst part well, memories, I guess, is about Pearl Harbor. When we went into Pearl Harbor the first time, that was pretty new. And the ship was still, it wasn't all built up and made for tourists at that time. But as a all far east, I could say that we hit just about every place. interesting. It was all interesting. The bad part about it is the people, the Japanese didn't like us. Told us to go home, but we couldn't, you know. But you didn't go into a Japanese bar or any place down there where you looked around, there was nobody there but Japanese, that's for sure. Because they just didn't like us. When you went down in Saigon, Indochina was just about like the French. They had their their places to eat were all under covers, places like that, and the restrooms were on the other side of the street. When they went to the restroom, you could see them from the makeup and stuff like that. You know, they still they didn't have the inside of the restrooms. They had the streets. But it was interesting. It's all different ways to live and ways of life. I guess that's the way to go.
About some promotions. As you spent time in the military, how many promotions did you were able to get through, or how does that work? I guess either during the time you spent or maybe just the branch.
Well, in the Navy, you had a certain time and grade. Like I went for boot camp as a seaman second class because I made a boot camp and graduated boot camp. I went to a seaman second class. And when I went aboard ship, I was there about 3 months, and I got the seaman first class. And then when I went to sea and we went over to Korea, I got third class fire patrol. That was after I went to a year's school. In the Air Force, I made, in the Air Force, when you come in time and grade, I guess, is they automatically promoted you if you kept your nose clean, I think.
Yeah, in my case, you just, you tested into it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, for me, it wasn't an automatic promotion. You
Oh,
had
what?
to take a test to
Really?
upgrade. I did anyway, yeah.
And when I was in there, they did your time and grade. Like I went in from the Navy to the Air Force, and I went in as a airman first class, which is equal to buck sergeant in the
Yeah.
Army.
Yeah.
And I stayed in there and was in there 2 years, and they promoted me to staff. That was automatic. They just had a meeting, and I went to staff sergeant. But the Navy, you had to have time and grade, and then you had to take a test.
Okay.
But in the Air Force, I didn't have that.
I started out through officer training as, I think it was a staff sergeant, because they keep you at that pay grade. And then once I got my commission, I was a second lieutenant. That's kind of the difficult thing too when you're working with enlisted and officers, because after you get your commission after the 30 or 90 days, well then jokingly they call you the 90-day wonder, right? And so even though like somebody like Bill or somebody like Kurt has lots more experience, because I was commissioned, I outranked them. And that was difficult because they, you know, a lot of these enlisted guys that have 15, 20 some years and they've moved up their ranks as enlisted personnel, they more or less resent somebody that is a 90-day wonder that's been, you know, telling them what to do. So it was difficult. I didn't continue as long enough to get to become a first lieutenant or a captain. And again, you have to test and you have to have a certain amount of time and grade. I resigned before I made it any further up the rank. But I still have my gold bars, which are a little tarnished by now.
Any other differences of?
No. In our technical career field, you had to pass some continuing education units and become qualified at higher skill levels as you went through. And for instance, you had to have the NCO leadership school so that you could make E6. You had to have NCO Academy. to make E7, and it just, stacks on, but it's time, qualification, and education is what it takes in that case.
Well, we're just about out of time. I think we have about a minute left here or so. So we'll conclude this part of the project. Thank you for sharing everything that you did today.